Hey everyone, it's Nella here. I realize I've been talking a lot about Fleur and Drew's stories, but I haven't really mentioned much of anything about Alwyn's story, except for the fact that she's a magician's apprentice and is Fleur's roommate at the Curiosity Shop. But Alwyn's actually the main character of her own story. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So, imagine an alternate universe, and in this alternate universe, it's the 1920s, but there's elements of the 30s. And in this world, it's the Great War has been over for a few years, many years, but it's still quite fresh in everyone's memories. And as usually happens with large wars, there has been a cultural shift. And in this case, there's practitioners of magic, and they've kind of come out of the woodwork since the end of the war. There's still a lot of mistrust and superstitions surrounding these practitioners of magic, just because they're very shadowy, and now that they're a bit more out in the open, everyone's starting to realize that they've always been there, that the general populace wasn't aware of them, but that doesn't mean that they didn't exist. And it's in that environment that in a central city of Canada, smack dab in the middle, our story begins. There's a young couple, the Taylors, who have 3 daughters, and their middle daughter is Alwyn. And when she is around 10 or 11, she suddenly falls ill. She starts having bursts of energy followed by periods of fatigue, but listlessness and insomnia. She also becomes quite pale, and basically no one can figure out what's wrong with her. And it's kind of just assumed that, well, she's going to die. When suddenly, when a stranger knocks on the door, and the stranger is not particularly tall, but he's willowy, and he's very odd looking. So not only is he willowy, he's pale, he has dark eyes, and white wavy hair that's pulled back in a ponytail. But she's also quite young. Anywhere from about 17, maybe 18 or 19, but he's quite young. He's also dressed in clothes that don't quite seem the right locale. And the Taylors, not quite knowing what to do, let this stranger sit at their table and explain why he thinks he knows what ails their daughter. The Taylors are a bit leery of this stranger because not only does he look strange, he's also a foreigner. He has a German accent, which, if you know, Canada fought, of course, with Britain during the First World War against the Germans, so there's they're a bit leery of this stranger. But the stranger explains that his name is Faust, and he's a master magician. And what's wrong with Alwyn is that her magic is developing, but she hasn't learnt control of it. And goes on to explain that if she doesn't learn control, then she will certainly die. And she may die from her magic pretty much exploding outwards from her, which, as everyone has heard the horror stories, often can take small houses, entire city blocks, depending on how powerful the child would have been. Or she'll just waste away. And the only way that she can learn control, Faust tells them, is if she becomes an apprentice. And aren't the tailors just in luck that Faust doesn't have an apprentice? So, stuck between a rock and a hard place, the tailors send their young daughter away with this complete stranger, practically. And when our main story picks up, Alwyn has been apprenticed to Faust for 3 to 5 years, somewhere around there. This all happens prior to her arrival at the curiosity shop, because Faust and Alwyn eventually do end up at the curiosity shop. But that's a brief introduction into Alwyn's story of magic and love and life and... I'm trying to think what other word. Actually, magic pretty much sums it all up. Okay. Bye, everyone.